it's Jessie, and today I'm going to be drinking Blackberry Sage Black Tea from the Republic of Tea. This is not a small independent tea company like a lot of stuff from Sips by is, but we'll see. Okay, so today we're gonna do, this is my summer reading vlog. If you watched my last wrap up, there were a bunch of mystery books on there, and that's because I've been reading these books over the summer. I'm a teacher, or working on becoming a teacher. Anyway, last year I was teaching a couple of classes, and on one of the last tests I gave them for the year, one of the bonus question was, what's your favorite book? And students answered it, and based on the answers they gave, I compiled a list of books. Now, you're going to see a list of 36 books. I'll have it on the screen. I'm doing things with my hand, which at this point you won't see because this will be on the screen for you to look at. There were 2 books that I took off of this because they weren't really books. One was, it just said Greek mythology book, which is very incredibly vague, and I think was probably based on their English class had done a mythology unit earlier that year, so I'm guessing it was just whatever they read. And then somebody put something about Fenway Park, and I could not find the book they were talking about, so it's maybe they got the title wrong, maybe it was an article or a podcast or something, I don't know, but so those 2 were off the list. The other thing I did is I went on here and on the list and I wrote down whether I had read the book before, whether or not I had ever heard of it, and how much I wanted to read it based on either I had already read it and how interested I was in rereading it, or based on the synopsis, how interested I was. There were 3 books I removed from the list because I'd already read them and I didn't really feel like I wanted to reread them. These 3 were Lord of the Rings. I didn't really want to reread this. I didn't enjoy it that much the first time I read it, and while I do think I want to reread it at some point, I just wasn't in the mood for it. One of those was The Restaurant at the End of the Universe, which I took off mostly because it's the second book, and trying to read both Hitchhiker's Guide and Restaurant would have been a little much. But I absolutely love those books and probably will reread them at some point. And the other one that I took off was Harry Potter, because at the time that I did this with my students, I was already rereading Harry Potter, and then very shortly thereafter decided to stop reading Harry Potter because waves hand in the general direction of J.K. Rowling. So that left me with a list of 36 books to read. And I ordered them kind of semi-randomly to get a good mix of rereads and new reads and a good mix of like high priority, low priority, stuff like that. So hopefully if I read a book I didn't really like, it was immediately followed by a book I would like. And that list is what you're seeing, and I almost immediately threw that order right out the window. So hopefully this intro hasn't been too long because I know the video itself is going to be kind of long, so let's get right into that with the first book I read. Just submitted my grades for the year, so it's officially summer for me, and I'm going to assume that I remember to record a video later to intro this video, and so you'll already know what I'm doing, but I'm getting started. The first one I'm going to read, I have the audiobook for The Hate U Give by Angie Thomas. Wasn't originally where I was going to start, mostly because it's a contemporary, which isn't really my thing, but given everything going on, it seemed like as good a time as any. So I have the audiobook for this. I'm gonna get started. I finished The Hate U Give by Angie Thomas, and it was a lot. 2 things. One, I don't think I like contemporaries. I've read a few this year, and they're like objectively good, but then I didn't enjoy them just because there's certain elements, the writing style of contemporaries I don't like, the high school element that a lot of contemporaries have, I just find a lot hard to relate to, like the relationships and things, like just feel, I don't know, low stakes a lot of times. So I think that's one of the issues I have. And then the other thing is that this book, I did not enjoy reading The Hate U Give. Not to say that it was bad, it just wasn't an enjoyable reading experience, but I don't think it's supposed to be. I think it's supposed to make you uncomfortable and make you upset, and it did a really good job of doing that. I haven't rated this on Goodreads yet. I think I'm gonna give myself the rest of the day to kind of like calm down, figure out what I feel about it, because I'm still just not entirely sure, but I'm leaning towards 4 stars, which is pretty high for me. It was really, really well done. And there were some parts of it that I really, really did like. The relationship Star and Maverick have is just so beautiful to me, and there was one scene in particular that really, really reminded me of a moment I had with my dad once when I was going through something really, really hard. And that was really good. But I also think it was just a very powerful book to read. And I really enjoyed it. So anyway, I think I'm gonna start Wonder now. I'm not entirely sure what this book is about. I actually have no idea what this book is about. All I know about it is that I saw it a lot of times in like middle school, high school libraries. I've seen it a lot. And I've always like picked it up and then never and put it back kind of thing. So we'll see. I'm gonna start that soon. Sorry for the background noise. I'm in the bathroom because my partner's studying and I don't want to disturb him. I finished Wonder, and it's honestly kind of great. I only ended up giving it 4 stars, and that's because the beginning of it was really hard for me. It's the first part. It's from Augie's perspective. Did I say what this book was about? This book is about a young boy who has a genetic defect that makes his face really ugly. I don't want to say he's disfigured because that seems really offensive, but he has like a cleft lip, his eyes are droopy, he has weird ears, he's ugly. But like not just like, oh, he's ugly, like people stare. And it's his parents sending him to school, a real school for the first time in 5th grade. And it's his story, but it also like has different perspectives from his friends and like his sister and things, so it kind of is not just how he feels, it's also how people like genuinely react to him, which was interesting. I didn't like the first part with Augie's perspective. I think part of it might have been the narrator gave him a weird voice that I really struggled with. But then after getting some of the other perspectives and then coming back to him, it almost felt intentional. Like to give you an auditory example of like what he might be visually. Does that make sense? I feel like I might be making it deeper than it really is. But then I liked all the other perspectives. I think there were some perspectives that weren't necessary, like his sister's boyfriend that's getting a little out there. People that didn't feel as connected to him. So that was weird to me, but for the most part I really liked it. I feel like I'm not quite the target for this. I feel like I'm a little out of the age range where that, like, be kind to each other, be nice, don't judge a book by its cover message really didn't stick with me as much as it might have if I was reading this 10 years ago. But I do think it's a really sweet book for, like, a middle grade audience, and I think it definitely, there were things there that resonated with me in all of the perspectives, so I thought it was really well done. For a total change of pace, my next book is supposed to be Imaginary Friend by Stephen Chbosky, but I didn't check ahead of time and it's on hold now. It says about 4 weeks, but I'm expecting it to be shorter than that because there's only one other person waiting. So instead of that, I'm gonna listen to The Body in the Woods by April Henry. I'm not sure what this is about. It's a YA, either mystery or horror or thriller. Yeah, it's part of a series, but like suspense series seem weird to me. I don't know. This isn't a genre I read a lot of anyway, so I'm interested to get started on this one. Almost went to bed and forgot to update y'all. I finished The Body in the Woods, I think is what it was called. I don't know if I told you what it was about. It's about a group of kids, 3 high school kids that are on a search and rescue, volunteer search and rescue team. And they are looking for a person that's missing in the woods, and they come across a dead body. Not the person they were looking for, but and then they kind of don't leave well enough alone, and instead of letting the police deal with it, decide they're going to try to figure out what happened. I I don't really have strong feelings about this book. I thought 2 of the 3 characters were really well written, really kind of well rounded. I thought the third was kind of the worst. There's some mental health representation. One of the main characters, I think, is meant to be portrayed as autistic or having Asperger's. I'm not sure if that was intentional or I'm just reading something that wasn't meant to be there and she was just supposed to be awkward or quirky. But it certainly came across as like autism to me. The other one is one of the characters' mom has bipolar disorder, or I assume that's what it is. I don't know how well that's done either because this is just not a topic I'm well enough educated on to say how I feel, to say whether I think it's right or not. Somebody that's got more experience there, somebody that maybe is bipolar could tell better. I tried reading the reviews and none of the reviews really seemed to mention it. So I don't know. The mystery itself was pretty good. I think it would have been better if we hadn't gotten the killer's perspective sprinkled throughout because that made it very obvious to us as the reader who it was. So you couldn't really follow along with the kids as they did the mystery. So overall, just a mediocre book. I gave it 3 stars. Next on my list, I'm starting The Greatest Gift. What's it called? The Ultimate Gift by Jim Stovall. I thought it was nonfiction. It's not nonfiction. It's a fiction Christian book. Some guy dies, and in his will, there's all sorts of like weird. I don't really want to read this one, but I'm going to. It's really short. I can get it out in a day or 2. I also, soon-ish, I'm going to start The Things They Carried by Tim O'Brien, because I have it physically. I'm just going to kind of sprinkle it in. It's kind of told in short stories, so I can kind of sprinkle it in throughout everything. Just because I'm kind of stalling on the 2 physical books I'm reading right now, so it'd just be kind of nice to pick up a book and hold it and read it. So I'm going to get started on that sometime in the next couple days. This will be a reread for me, and I loved it when I read it the first time, and I'm fully expecting to love it again and probably end up crying, so that should be a fun one. It's been quite a while since I've updated because, I started grad school, so I'm really busy. So I really haven't had an update. Didn't have time to read. But I just finished Imaginary Friend by Stephen Chbosky. It was pretty good. I ended up giving it a 3.75, around to a 4. I think the scope of it was just too big. I didn't find it scary at all, ever. It really reminded me of Coraline, really. And Coraline did scare me at points. And I think the difference is just the number of perspectives in Imaginary Friend made it hard to really attach to what anybody was feeling. And I think in horror, the fear of the characters helps make you afraid. At least in my very, very minimal experience with horror. So, given that that's the case, I think it would have been better if the perspectives were less. If it was just like Christopher and David and their friends, well, Christopher's friends and David, or, Ambrose, the mom, and the sheriff, it just narrowed the scope a little bit. It would have been better. Also, way, way too many passages about children peeing their pants. Just far too much of it. Anyway. I'm also, let me get it off my shelf here, working on reading The Things They Carried by Tim O'Brien. I have a physical copy of this because one of my students a couple years ago left it behind when she moved out of her dorm, and I love this book. So I have a history with this book. I read the first short story chapter of this, the title story, The Things They Carried, in middle school. And then I read the entire book in high school, and I absolutely loved it. It's got a really warm place in my heart. So I'm, a little more than halfway through it, and I'm still loving it. It definitely has its problems, but I'm really enjoying it. It's definitely, there's some sexist stuff, there's some racist stuff, but I don't know. It's not, I don't want to say it's not bothering me because it's not really my place to say whether racism bothers me. But I think in this it just comes across as realistic and gritty, whereas like in Catch-22, which I read earlier this year, that kind of thing came across as unnecessary and inauthentic. Anyway, so I'll talk more about this when I actually finish it, but I'm really, really enjoying rereading it. As for what I'm gonna read next, I probably should have decided this before I started doing this, but it might be a little bit because I try to alternate between audiobooks for this and other things I want to read, and there's a short story collection for the NB Book Club that's run by Jesse from Bow Ties and Books. Anyway, I want to read the book for the NB Book Club this month, but I think the next one I'll pick up for audiobook, Hamlet. That's interesting. You know, I think I'm going to do that. I'm going to read Hamlet in audiobooks. That sounds interesting. And I'm also going to skip through some of them, especially things that are like the first book in a series, because it's just impossible that I'm going to get through all of these this summer. So those are the ones I'm going to start skipping, and then we'll see how far we get. I'm also going to do, by the time you see this, the vlog for it will already be up, but it's the reading rush is coming up in like 2 weeks, a week, 2 weeks, a week and a half, whatever. And I'm gonna read Holes for that, or at least attempt to read Holes for that, because it fits a lot of the prompts for the reading rush. So that'll be coming up soon too, and I'll update you a little bit on that one, but not too much because I'm gonna do a whole vlog. Okay, that's it. I'm gonna get a bath and finish up the things they carry. But I did finish Hamlet. I started this like 2 days ago while I was doing laundry, and I wanted to do it kind of as quick as possible and with as little distractions, almost like I was watching the play. And so I started it a couple days ago, got about halfway through it, waited, and then finished it yesterday. The audiobook production of this was kind of amazing. The voice acting was just so good, especially Ophelia. Whoever was playing Ophelia, that was just amazing. The only issue is if I wasn't already familiar with the story, I think I would have gotten a little lost. Like, you don't get any of the stage directions, you're not seeing them visually, so you kind of lose a little bit of what's happening. Even though Shakespeare does kind of do that whole, like, actors telling you what they're doing thing, but I think I would have gotten a little lost if I had been reading it for the first time. If you don't know what Hamlet's about, it's about a young man named Hamlet and his father, the King of Denmark, also named Hamlet, sometimes called Denmark in the play, has recently died under very mysterious circumstances, and then like 2 months later his mom marries his uncle. And if you don't know what it's about, I think that's all I'm going to say, because I think it's just sometimes good to go into classics not knowing a lot. But it's, I don't know, it's not my favorite Shakespeare by any means, so, but it's a good one. Then I was in the mood for like a mystery or something spooky, scary, but Dark Matter wasn't available, and that was the only other thing on this list that really fit that. So I looked, and We Were Liars was available on Scribd, or on Libby. So I started that and finished that last night. So this is about like these wealthy kids that hang out, or this wealthy family that like owns a bunch of property on an island, and every summer they spend their time there, and the kids kind of hang out together. But one summer, our main character, whose name I can't remember because I literally listened to this in like 3 hours, one summer she's like in an accident and hits her head while she's swimming and starts having memory issues, and that's about it that I'm gonna tell you. I just wasn't super invested in it. It kind of bored me. I wasn't interested in the mystery, and then at the end when it's kind of given away was not a good twist, so I gave that one 2 stars. I gave Hamlet 4 stars. Like I said, it's not my favorite Shakespeare. It'd be interesting to know what is. I've read 6 Shakespearean plays: Hamlet, Macbeth, King Lear, Romeo and Juliet, Julius Caesar, Midsummer Night's Dream. So I've read 6. Maybe, Do you want me to read a bunch of Shakespeare over the next few months and then do like a ranking rating of Shakespeare? That might be fun. I like Shakespeare, so I might enjoy that. If you do, let me know in the comments below, and maybe give me suggestions for some of your favorite Shakespeare plays. There are a few that I know I want to read. Taming of the Shrew, Twelfth Night, The Tempest, that I want to read. Much Ado About Nothing, but yeah. Anyway, I'm gonna go finish. I'm gonna get this done today, I swear, mostly because the reading rush starts tomorrow and I want to pick up holes and I don't want to be reading too many books at the same time, so. Alright, bye. Update. I haven't updated in a while because it's been all the reading rush, but 1. Finish The Things They Carried. It's still really good. I still really love it. Give it 4.5. I just don't feel comfortable giving it 5 stars because of the racism, xenophobia, and sexism in here that never really get addressed, and I totally understand. It's totally a product of the time, totally makes sense. It's totally, probably, almost definitely a realistic depiction of how people talked and acted in the setting that this is, but just left me uncomfortable, especially because it's never addressed even in like the after war sections. But this is really, really good. Honestly, of every like war storybook I've ever read, by far the best. From a civilian point of view. I think I'm gonna mail this to my dad because I really think he'd appreciate it. I've been telling him for years to read it, so now I have it. He doesn't have an excuse. If I mail it to him and he doesn't read it, then he just looks like a jerk. Started and finished Among the Hidden by Madison Haddix. Name will be here. It was boring. So this is about a world in which people aren't allowed, because of food shortages, people aren't allowed to have more than 2 children. And this family has a 3rd child, and he hides, and then yeah, that's like the premise, is just this kid that's the 3rd child in a family that's only supposed to have 2. For a potentially interesting dystopian concept, it just wasn't, it was boring. Like, the 1/3, 2/3 of it is just him, like, hiding and not really doing anything and kind of complaining, but also like mad at himself for complaining. I'm sorry, I have a lot of light reflecting. Is that my laptop? It is my laptop. There's a little one for my screen, but it's fine. So I thought it was boring. I think I ended up giving it 2 stars. It's been a little while since I finished that one. Next, started and finished Holes. This is for one of my reading rush things, so check my reading rush vlog to hear my thoughts on it, but the very short version is it's good, but if you've seen the movie, you know what happens, and the book really doesn't add that much interesting. And now I've started Dark Matter by Blake Crouch. So far I'm not super far into it, but also it sounds really, really familiar to something that I've already read. I think, was it one of the short stories in the Jordan Con anthology? So it's a guy, the premise is it starts with him and he gets attacked by somebody, like kidnapped and attacked and drugged by somebody, and then he wakes up in a world where like nobody knows him. People know him, but nothing about his life is what he remembers. And there's a story in the Jordan Con anthology, I think. And there was a story about a guy that created a portal to another dimension where he could switch places with himself, and over time, like, it caused like weird flooding. I don't remember the exact details. It was pretty good, but that feels like what this is. I'm like,
yeah, I do.
Skip to this time if you don't want to risk spoilers, but this is for me on chapter 2 making predictions. So if I'm right, like, is it really a spoiler for me to make a guess? But skip this time. Skip to here, just in case. But here's what I think. The guy that attacked him and drugged him and knocked him out was himself from another dimension who was unhappy with his life, and because he's a really successful physicist, invented a way to travel between dimensions. So he came and switched places with himself in a dimension where his life was more what he wanted it to be. That's what I think happened. Maybe he'll go somewhere more interesting with it. Maybe something exciting will happen here, but I think I already know the premise, so I just don't know how exciting it's going to be for me. Maybe he'll do something with it to make it interesting, but we shall see.
I don't get claims on Austria past 2-year-old.
Anyway, that's it, and I will probably update you again when I finish Dark Matter. Finish Dark Matter. I don't really have any strong feelings on it. It was kind of boring to me because I kind of saw most of it coming. It was very predictable. I got sunburned this week. Anyway, so I don't know. I gave it 3.5 stars, and I was originally going to round that up to 4. Just because I do think objectively it's a pretty good story, even if, like, I was a little bored by it. But then I started reading some of the reviews, and some of the reviews mentioned how flat the female characters were, that there were, first of all, there's only 2 of them, and that they were really only there to further the main character's story. I just blanked on his name. I can't remember. Just there to further his story, and didn't really have any agency of their own, and so with that in mind, I'm going to round it down to 3 instead of up to 4. The next one I'm going to go to, I wanted to get some diversity and not just do rereads, just because of the time. It's already, a week into August, but kind of on a classics kick, so I think I'm going to read Lord of the Flies next. And that'll be the next one I read. So I'm going to start picking that up. I might pick it up tonight, definitely tomorrow. And we'll get started on that. Finished Lord of the Flies, and I moved on to the next book on my list, which is This Is Where It Ends. Lord of the Flies, if you're not aware already, is about young boys, schoolboys that get lost. They get in an accident and get stranded on an island, and then it's just a commentary on society. I think... I don't know, it's not a message I necessarily agree with, but overall gave the book 3.25. This was a reread for me. I read it myself in high school. It's okay. I think I enjoyed it a little bit more when I wasn't reading it from an academic standpoint, when I was just reading it to enjoy it. But, yeah, it's okay. And This Is Where It Ends. I'm about halfway through it, 2/3 of the way through it. Yeah, quite a ways into it. And... it's about a school shooting. It's kind of a contemporary, kind of a thriller, somewhere in between those two. I think if I think of it as a contemporary, I don't like it. If I think of it as a thriller, I like it a little bit more because the emotions, the fear are displayed really, really well. But as a commentary on school shootings, I'm not really liking that. There's a lot of, if you're familiar with 13 Reasons Why, more the book than the show, because the show gets all kind of off topic after the first season, but it's got some of that going on where it's not just this is a person who is clearly doing bad things, and it has that whole this is what everybody around them did that drove them to this decision, and I'm not liking that part of it. There's also 3 romantic subplots, and I really feel like this topic doesn't need that. So I'll update you when I'm done with that, and then I'm going to go on to Ready Player One after that, I think, is my plan. So that's where I'm at. Finished, oh geez, what was it called? This Is Where It Ends by, oh god, I looked up her name and now I can't remember how to pronounce it. She's Dutch. Let me bring it up again.
Name is Marieke Nijkamp.
Marieke Nijkamp. Yeah, I mean, nothing's changed since my kind of first impression of it. I think it's more thriller than contemporary, which was not what I wanted or was expecting. The love stories in it were unnecessary and felt really out of place. And looking through the reviews, a lot of the more negative, 2-star, 1-star reviews seem to feel the same way, that it just kind of, I don't want to say making light or trivializes, but it just felt like it wasn't taking school shootings, which is a very serious, hard topic that unfortunately far too many American students have to deal with, a little lightly. Not, I don't know. And it's not I think it's perfectly fine to take heavy topics and make content out of it. It's just not what I want. So I ended up giving this 3 stars. It came out almost evenly to 3 stars. So, that was that. And I'm on to Ready Player One, and oof, where am I at? I don't even think chapter 3. Yeah, so full disclosure, I've already seen the movie. I've seen the movie before. Oh, there's some of the character-related plot twists later, I know, but, like, for the most part, I actually don't know that much about what's the story. I don't remember that much of the story. It's rough. It's real rough. Mostly it's the tone. So I'm doing the audiobook, which is narrated by Will Wheaton, and who is doing a fantastic job. Like, he really is. But he just kind of has one of those voices. And then when the actual tone of the writing, like, I'm trying to take the tone of voice out of it and just focus on the words, and it's just so arrogant, sanctimonious. Like, think of the absolute epitome of the worst kind of actually nerd, and there you have it. Gatekeepy, just the worst kind of nerd. And that's kind of the tone I'm getting here. And boy, Ernest Cline really hates poor people, doesn't he? Oh, it's just it's not good. There was, like, I'm listening at double speed, and I actually think I'm going to speed it up even more. But, like, 5 to 10 minutes my time, so, like, double that in the actual audiobook time, was just spent ranting about how this boy at a young age got disillusioned with the world because he discovered digital libraries and found out that God isn't real and we're all going to die and everybody's terrible, and it's edgy. It's real edgy. It's like 4chan in a book. I'm gonna power through it because it's audiobook, and I think if I speed it up I can just swallow it, but it's rough. So there were a couple books that I read at the end that I didn't really talk about. There's also one in the middle I didn't talk about. I never talked about The Ultimate Gift by Jim Silver, which I don't know why I never recorded a clip for that. It was just underwhelming. It wasn't good. It was about what I expected it to be, which was really preachy without actually saying anything. Anyway, yeah, it very much felt like old man talking down on the new generation. Put your phones away and enjoy people's company. Anyway, so I didn't really enjoy that one. I think I gave it 2 stars. I should double check that. Yeah, I gave it 2 stars. Okay, then the other ones. So, the last clip you saw was me reading Ready Player One, and I never wished this mug was full of wine more so. Ready Player One kind of broke me. I mean, I kept reading, so it didn't, like, destroy my will to read, which is good, but it did kind of make me want to stop talking about reading for a little while. Here, while I talk about Ready Player One, I'll throw some of my tweets up, because I kind of live tweeted this experience, because it was an experience. I did not like this book. I did not like it at all. There were a couple moments. I give it credit for a couple little things, but for the most part, it's bad. This is bad. So, I feel almost bad hating it. I always feel bad when I hate. Oh, I'm gonna shift. My light's changed. I always kind of feel bad when I like books that other people, or I don't like books that other people like. And when I was reading this, my partner mentioned to our roommate about that I didn't like it, and my roommate got a little upset because he had really enjoyed it when he read it as a kid, when he was younger. And I think that's just it. This book is written to appeal to a very, very specific demographic. It is written in a way that it will appeal to young teenage boys that are insecure and awkward, uncomfortable talking to girls, really like video games, and really like 80s pop culture. If you're in that demographic, you will probably love this book. If you're outside of this demographic, I think the issue is, though, while this book is very clearly aimed at that demographic, it doesn't do anything to challenge that demographic. It's just wish fulfillment. It's just the author's self-insert fantasy wish fulfillment story. And I normally don't try to be like, what this book is saying is obviously the author's beliefs. Because, like, my roommate my roommate's argument when I was doing this was like, well, that's the character. He's giving, whatever the guy's name is, Percy. Is it Percy? Whatever. He's giving him that voice. Oh yeah, his thing was Percival. Wade. And I would believe that. I still don't think it would be good if that was the case. But if you look up Ernest Cline's other stuff, it becomes very clear that this is just how he feels. I'm not going to recite it for you because I would be uncomfortable doing so, but I will link a poem he wrote in the description if you're interested in reading it about women. And it's just, Ernest, honey, can we have a talk sometime? Because I'm a little concerned about you. Anyway, so I gave that 2 stars, which is really generous, but I gave it 2 stars. Because if I can finish a book, it can't be that bad, right? And then I moved on, and I just never got around to filming clips for the rest of it. So the next book I read after that was The Sweetness at the Bottom of the Pie by Alan Bradley. This is a middle grade mystery. It's about a young girl who is living with her father and 2 sisters, and one day first a dead bird shows up at their house, and very shortly thereafter a dead body shows up at their house. And this girl is very into chemistry, specifically poisons, but chemistry in general, and she decides she wants to try to solve this mystery. And it was just delightful. I did not expect to enjoy this. I haven't had a lot of luck reading middle grade so far. I've never really read a mystery before, unless it was more on the thriller side of a mystery, so I really wasn't sure. Clouds. I really wasn't sure if I was gonna like this or not. And I did. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was delightful, and I can't wait to read the next one. So I ended up giving this one 4 stars. I couldn't quite give it the 5, just because like it wasn't perfect, but I really enjoyed it, and I really want to keep reading it, which was unexpected. And finally, the last book I read, I probably could have squeezed a couple more in here, but whatever. The last book I read was Will's Red Coat by Tom Ryan. This is a memoir, so it's nonfiction, about a man who adopts an elderly dog, and it's just his relationship with this dog, his relationship with the other dog that he owns, and just how this dog kind of changed his outlook on life. I hate saying something like this about a memoir, so like take what I'm saying with a little bit of a grip, but I thought it was a weird story, and I think he could have done better to like get the pacing right, and there were things that happened in it that I wish I had known a little bit more about. Like there's a time where he like leaves and he can't take this dog with him, and they leave it at the vet clinic, and then he comes back and he's just miraculously not recovered, but he's like healthier and more chipper, and I'm like, I want to know why that happened. What happened that changed what this dog is going through. So I that's the kind of thing that was missing from it for me. Plus it just kind of had that bland keep trying, don't give up kind of message to it. Like there's a moral to this story, but it's just a vague hand wavy be kind to others, love each other thing. So I didn't really enjoy this. I did what I liked, and what I think might be the reason this was on a student's favorite book is it was written by a guy from the area, and so it's written about the area that I was teaching in. And so it was really neat to like, when he's talking about hiking with his dogs, being like, been by that trail, or I went to that bookstore. Actually mentions a bookstore in there that was my favorite bookstore when I was living in Maine, so or you know, I've driven by that vet clinic a few times, you know, so that was kind of nice, but that's a very like only gonna appeal to that thing. So I don't know if this was a book that was big outside of that area, but it could just be it got kind of big in the area. So at the end of the summer, I ended up reading 16 of the 36 books on this list, which is it's a little bit of a fail. I really expected to have gotten through more than that. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I'll have some more stats going up for you. I'll make some graphs and things about like genres and things for the entire list, not just the ones I read, just to give you some interesting insights into what high schoolers are reading. These were mostly 9th graders, although I have some older kids, so you're looking at like 13, 14-year-olds. But for me, of the 16 books that I read, I gave them an average of 3 stars. I think the big thing for me, takeaway, I don't like reading about high schoolers, and high schoolers do, which makes sense, but it's not that I don't connect to them. Some of them have very relatable problems, even for me as an adult, but like a lot of it focuses on relationships in a way that I am beyond that part of a relationship, so it's a little bit hard. So I think that was a big problem. That was a continual problem that came up through several of the books. And then some of it might just be the very specific area I was living in. It's a very conservative area. Even the high schoolers, some of them were very conservative. So that value was kind of reflected in a lot of the books. And I think that also was a bit of a struggle for me. But I'd love to do this again. I mean, I'm going to be a teacher, hopefully, for a very long time. So I'm hoping I can do this again, but next time I don't think I'll do it a big long-term thing like this. It might be like monthly vlogs or something. And I'll probably still read several of these books. A lot of them are ones that sounded good. I just didn't get to them. So, alright. That's it. Bye.